It seems totally normal to listen to a podcast about the Toronto Argonauts. It's the X's and Argos podcast.
Welcome to the X's and Argos post-game reaction podcast brought to you by Funny Bone Broth following a 44-3 shellacking by the home BC Lions over your Toronto Argonauts. Ben Grant, joined as always by JB. We're going to break it down for you, go through what we saw, maybe give you the few positives that we can take out of this disastrous game. JB, this felt like the last time the Argos were in BC, 2019. They lost 55-8. It was almost worse because this is a better team. You expected it from that 2019 team because they couldn't really beat anybody. But this is a team that have expectations, and to go in here to BC Place and lose 44-3 to get dominated in every phase has to be upsetting, I guess.
Yeah, I would characterize it as upsetting. We knew it was going to be uphill. It's not too much of a homer to say they're dealing with injuries at significant positions, and that reduces the effectiveness of the entire team. However, what happened tonight was a disaster. I mean, it just looked like a team that either didn't have a plan or whose game plan was just so wrong about what BC does. I think that was probably the most disturbing to me, both offensively and defensively. They had no answers in the first half, no answers in the second half. They held the ball for 5 minutes in the third quarter. They just were taken apart on national television. So yeah, I mean, it's easy to flush a game like this, but it was not great.
It started with the coin toss. BC won the coin toss, but they did something unusual there in that they chose to receive, which teams just don't generally do now. They haven't done that for a long time, unless you're really trying to establish something. So in BC, in this case, the reason they want the ball first instead of deferring is they want to send their offense out there to score a touchdown. They feel really good about their script. They want to get out in front and make it tough on Toronto, make sure that Toronto's playing catch up the whole way, because Toronto is clearly built as a team that plays better with the lead. So that worked for them. They end up taking that opening kickoff all the way back to the 42, and then a few plays later, it's a bust and a touchdown. And that was going to be sort of foreshadowing things to come, because that happened on several different drives. Now, let's just talk about that defensive philosophy, because we saw it in that first drive, and then it kind of continued. They were just playing so soft, whether it was man or zone. The defenders, the DBs for Toronto, were playing so far off, and it was just easy for Rourke to pick apart the defense. It seemed to me like they were just hell-bent on not letting anything behind them, and so they were happy to let Rourke just complete passes all the way down the field. But then once they got to about the 30-yard line or so, there'd be a bust every single time, and Rourke would find it every time. And there were 3 of his passing touchdowns that came off busts from about the 30-yard line.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the first thing really is to tip the hat to Rourke. I mean, he looked fantastic. I mean, no two ways about it. He looked like the best CFL quarterback that I have watched in I don't know, 7 years. I mean,
his performance also was record-setting tonight.
Right.
It's even the most passing yards by a Canadian quarterback in CFL history.
Never mind a Canadian. I mean, honestly, I'm talking about watching a quarterback perform at that elite level. I don't know. There's certainly nobody in the league in the past 3 years who has put on a performance like that. That level of elite quarterbacking. So, that's tough. Look, from a defensive point of view, you have a guy who is that dialed in. That is a problem for sure. But I agree with you. I didn't understand their reluctance to play tight man coverage, especially when they started mixing in more blitzes. Like if you're not going to play tight man coverage and take away the inside slant, then you shouldn't blitz. I mean, they were just getting eaten alive on those plays, and I didn't understand it. And the Argos have shown that this particular group with injuries is not great at running zone. And BC ate their lunch. You can see the guys high-fiving after the touchdown. They're like, look at this. They're like, they just knew. They're like, we run this play, they're going to jump all over that in the flats. They just knew it was going to be a bust. It had been a bust a bunch of times against Montreal, and, it was a bust again. So I don't know. I was disappointed that zone wasn't thrown out the window, and that when they did play man, it was not man. I mean, you have a guy who's that dialed in. You've got to be all. I mean, and on the flip side, I thought BC, played really aggressive man defense, and you could see it on every catch. It was contested.
And their zones were like that too, where they just played tight zone, they played tight man, and there was just so much space in front of the Argos DBs.
The fact that the announcers had noticed it, but the fact that there wasn't a single Toronto player on the television screen on all of the touchdowns is just unacceptable. That's just not. You just can't have that. And I don't think that's players. That's scheme. That is either having the wrong scheme or not having the scheme that you can do with the players that you have. But I thought that was really. I thought the way the touchdowns were scored was really embarrassing. And of course, giving up 430 yards in the air is something any secondary unit or defensive coach will, I would think, not have much to sleep about.
It was another incredible Nathan Rourke performance numbers-wise. So 39 of 45. So again, he's near that 90% completion mark for 436, 4 touchdowns, no picks. It was just a shredding. And not to take things away from Rourke, because I think he played a heck of a game, but they were generally easy completions. It was just a guy standing wide open. And now where I do give him a lot of credit is finding those guys. And you notice that every single time there was a bust, he was on it. And young quarterbacks often miss those. They don't realize till they get to the sideline. They look at the iPad and they're like, oh man, I missed this bust on the other side. He didn't miss anything. Every time there was a bust, he hit it for a touchdown. Every time there's a guy open, he hit him. He only had 6 incomplete passes, and I think a couple of those were drops too. So, it was an incredible game by Rourke, but made a lot easier by that loose coverage. And amazingly, the Argos found like 3 different ways to bust on all 3 of those bust touchdowns. So the first one, it was McFadden who had flats, and he thought he had help over top, but Amos clearly didn't think he was supposed to be helping over top. So we don't know which one of them is right on that without looking at a replay. But yeah, just, wide open receiver in the end zone. Next, they had 2 guys playing the flats. They both thought they had flats. No one had deep. And again, there's Katoya standing in the end zone for a touchdown. And on the third one, it looked like they tried to execute a switch, but both DBs ended up going with the inside man, and nobody took the corner route, and he's wide open in the end zone for a touchdown. It was 3 busts, 3 different ways, each one of them unacceptable, and Rourke found the open man each time.
Yeah, he was absolutely, dialed in. I thought his the contrast between the offense that he was running, that he clearly had an absolute control of, and it fit his strengths, and there was an energy to it, and there was a sort of an electricity to it not just him, just everybody on that BC team felt like this is a good offense. I know what I'm supposed to do here. And, it was high octane. It was quick passes, a lot of eye candy for the defense, play action and, deep shots when they were there. The contrast between that and Toronto just dialing up nothing, I thought was pretty stark.
And we've yet to see all the stuff that we've talked about, the misdirection we've talked about. Now, today was tough because they weren't ever really able to establish the run. Andrew Harris, had 2 nice runs to start the second half, and the second one ended in a fumble, unfortunately. But aside from that, they completely stuffed the Argos run game. He ends up with 27 yards on 7 carries. And remember, you're taking 20 of that came on those first 2 plays or second and third play of the second half. It was a really rough time for them running. And if you can't establish any kind of run, then play action is sort of out the window. But even that, like the execution was so poor at times where there was play action. It was to the wrong side. You had Harris going to the left and McLeod holding out play action to nobody on the right side. And obviously that's not drawing anyone in or freezing defenders. So that was really frustrating. We just didn't see a lot of it. I get why, because they couldn't, no one's going to buy it when you can't run anyway. But I just felt like BC, with largely rushing 4, were really able to clog things up. They were able to create a lot of pressure. And Bethel Thompson's looking downfield. He hasn't got much time. There was especially a lot of pressure coming from his left side, and his guys just weren't open. They were blanketed. And so, he took 4 sacks. He had to throw the ball away a couple times. A couple times it was just really contested balls where they were incomplete. And then sometimes the only option he had was to throw it like 60 yards across the field, like we saw him do last year, to the field side, where there was a guy there for a 5-yard gain on a 60-yard throw. So it just, there just wasn't a lot there. It's hard to even pinpoint exactly what was wrong, other than just a little bit of everything.
It looked like a team that had not practiced, which in some regards they hadn't. That it's really hard when you have guys who can't go full at practice. Football demands practice, especially on offense. You need the timing, you need looks, this works, that doesn't. And when you have guys, look, it's not that, but when guys are injured or guys are sick or guys can't go at practice because you're trying to save them for the game, this early in the season, I think you get exactly what that looks like. It looked like a team that doesn't have a full playbook. And when BC stopped them, they didn't have a plan B or C. They looked really lost out there. They didn't look like they had, like from an offensive point of view, they just didn't look like they had a plan. There was no change in the second half. I don't know why. I've often said this. I don't know why Daniels is Mr. 2 amazing catches and then never see him again. I don't know why he doesn't get the volume. I don't know why that's not schemed up. They don't have a complimentary running back for Harris, which is a problem. Harris is not a 20 carry guy. He just isn't at this point in his career. They need another back, right? In essence, they need a John White. They need somebody else to give him a look, to give him a different look out of the backfield. Catching the ball out of the backfield, maybe like watching it, really, Macbeth had that great seam throw to Tavares, but everything else was out to the wings, and the Argos just can't let defenses dictate that, because if they do that, they're dead. If they can't scheme up between the hash mark throws for Macbeth, then they are doomed.
Part of the problem is just like you said, like it's partly scheme, partly route running, but you just didn't have guys open. And I think this goes back to the guys are in the wrong spot still, and they have to. They've tested this now for 2 weeks. And it's been the same problem in 2 weeks. They've got Banks playing on the outside where he doesn't like playing, and he's just not as good. He's not as effective out there. He needs to be in the slot on the field side where he's been his whole CFL career, where he's been successful. And Davaris Daniels needs to be at X. And the reason everyone's mixed around is because Eric Rogers is hurt. But they've just got to find a replacement for him there. And you've got to get, if Phillips is going to be on the field and he's going to be in the slot for you on the field side, and you're getting him his 2 catches for 11 yards that he had today, you may as well have that over a W and have the other guys comfortable with where they are. That it's worth it. Like, it's not like Phillips is lighting it up from his spot there. So get him at W, or get AJ Richardson, get someone at W so that you can put Davaris at X and you can put Banks at Y, where they're happy, where they know what they're doing. And then at least you've got a chance to have a couple effective guys. Because now, the way that's set up right now, the only one who's seen any real success is Curly Gittens Jr. Banks did have that one touchdown, but it was, it was a pretty short pass in week 1, and he sort of made it work the way that he often does when he's in the slot. And he was lined up pretty close inside running a slant. So that would be my thing coming out of this. They've just got to find a different answer so that someone else is playing W and everyone can go back to the places they're comfortable, where they've had their reps, where they spent their preseason repping. This isn't working this way.
No, agreed. And, I know that injuries are a problem and a lot of teams are dealing with it. And I don't dismiss that. It does. It screws things up. It screws up your reps at practice. It screws up your plan. It screws up who's playing where. But you can't have an offense that looked like that. I mean, look, BC is a good team. I know they beat the hell out of Edmonton, but defensively, to be that dominated, like it doesn't bode well for matchups against Winnipeg and Saskatchewan.
No, well, it doesn't bode well for matchups against anyone.
No, I mean, I think
when you look like that,
right? I mean, I think they're better than they showed tonight, and we saw this last year that they had a Jekyll and Hyde, characteristic where they just some games were terrible, and they were able to kind of regroup and pull it together at home, and I would bet that would probably be the case, but it is disappointing to see, I just go back to the contrast. One team had an offense that was absolutely crackling with a guy at it who seemed to be having all of his skills highlighted and emphasized, and one looked like they were just drawing plays up in the dirt.
And I think what really showed at the end of the game was this sort of, is this juxtaposition of what was happening with the two teams today. That first drive, Toronto had an amazing first drive. It looked like McLeod Bethel-Thompson was sharp. He completed a few passes. They had a couple of runs in there. They get down to 1st and goal from the 1-yard line, and 3 straight runs from the 1-yard line, something that haunted Toronto all last season. They could not punch it in. The first was a run to Harris for no gain, and then 2 consecutive quarterback sneaks to no avail. And BC takes over on their own 1-yard line, drives 95 yards for a field goal. But same situation near the end of the game. BC is got 1st and goal from the 1, and they get a touchdown.
Yeah,
and every team does. Like you can't. In the CFL, you cannot be unable to score a touchdown from the 1-yard line. You have to be able to convert 3rd and 1s at like a 90% rate, and 1st and goal from the 1. Unless you get a penalty, that should be an automatic touchdown. Unless there's a holding call that now takes you out of range, 1st and goal from the 1 always has to be a touchdown because there's a yard of space. It's not like the NFL where the defensive line's right on top of you, they're right on the ball. In the CFL, you've got a full yard, and all you need is the yard, and when the snap is. And you don't even have guys, waggling in motion on those plays that are going to tip off when the snap's coming. You control the count, you control that yard, and it should be automatic every time. And it's so frustrating coming off last year where this was a huge problem, and just find that we're back here again. And this has to go on the interior line, because that's where the sneaks are coming from. It's a little bit on the quarterback too, but they've got to fix that.
Oh my God. I mean, football is often determined by 4 plays. It's a kind of an old coach thing to say, but you can take any game and you can pick 4 plays that either led to the win or caused a loss, and it's those 4, if you could change them, and clearly that changes the whole tenor of the game. I thought the defense did a decent job in the first half of keeping things relatively under control. And if we score there, and it changes the offense's, mojo, you banged it in on the road. To not be able to get it in on the road is just beyond embarrassing. Like, they don't have a short yardage quarterback, which is, they decided they wanted to go a different way at their quarterback position. So, that was a problem. And those plays, like, first of all, I mean, at least give Harris 2 shots at it. That first play was so badly blocked up. I mean, they even talked about it on the broadcast. It was so badly blocked up. It was like, what is this? It was like Ambles is kind of like coming over and he's supposed to kick somebody out. It was like, didn't even make any sense. When you watch it on replay, you're like, what is this blocking scheme? This doesn't make any sense for what they're trying to do here. It was more like, again, like, it just seemed like, okay, Hut, go. And you're like, what? What do you mean, Hut, go? Like, this offensive line, like, those guys that was not a blocked up play. You watch that play again, it looked like just a bunch of guys going on Hut. Like, that's not a play. Like, there needs to be.
It looked like a few of those that they had. Like, certainly,
it's got to be a blocking scheme here. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, it looked like they felt overwhelmed by, like, to me, what that first down Harris run looked like at the goal line was that they were kind of looking for it being blocked up the way that you might run a regular running play from midfield. But on the goal line, it doesn't look like that. On the goal line, you've got somebody in every gap. The entire team is basically stacked on the goal line. And so guys aren't in their regular spots. You're not climbing second level to get linebacker or anything like that. And so many guys were able to come through. It's a miracle that Harris was able to get back to the 1, because by the time he got the handoff, there were already a number of Lions in the backfield.
Yeah, I mean,
and it coming off of last week where they did run block so well, especially that interior, it was just kind of rough this week.
Somebody's got to get doubled. Like, there are no gaps to run through unless you scheme it up. Like, you've got to scheme up a goal line play, because, as you say, there's somebody coming through every gap. So you can't just hand it to the running back and say good luck.
No, and you also can't get away from that. Like, the answer to this is not on 3rd and 1 to be running like jet sweeps every time, or to be passing it or back in shotgun. Like, that's not the way that this has to be dealt with. The answer to converting 3rd and 1s is you have to get better at quarterback sneaks and at dive plays, because that's what every other team in CFL history has been able to do. This is just a part of the game. It's so easy to convert 3rd and 1s that it just feels, whenever you see a team get a 9-yard gain on first down, it almost feels like it's silly. Like, the referees should just kind of give it to them, because we know what's going to happen in the next play. And then it's going to be a first down. Or if it's not, somehow it'll be converted on 3rd.
I get frustrated because I'm like, we have 2nd and 1 converted against us over and over and over and over and over again. Like, do they not watch that film? Like, do they wonder how does the other team do it every single time? And we never get mad, because it's like, no, there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do on 1 yard. Like, I don't blame the offensive line. I don't blame our defensive line or linebackers. Like, no, there's no way to stop them.
1 yard is automatic in the CFL.
Right.
It's just not for the Argos.
I mean, honestly, I wanted people fired on the field today after that red zone debacle. I mean, just debacle. I mean, how many times are you going to make the same mistake? I mean, this is now into a year and a half of not being able to do anything in the red zone. I mean, I don't know. I don't even understand why'd you switch to quarterbacks. Like, what did that other quarterback bring? Like, who, what? Like, why didn't you just call somebody out of the stands?
Well, Austin Simmons is a good runner. Like, he's the best runner of the three guys
I
in
know, but
terms
there's
of
no
power
running
run.
involved.
I know that's the thing. Like, quarterback sneak isn't really about that. Like, the best
No.
quarterback sneaker in the NFL is Tom Brady. There's no one better than Tom Brady at quarterback sneaks, and it's not because he's a good running quarterback. It's nothing to do with that. There is a skill to it, but it's not your best runner that has to be out there always.
I would have
No,
left Macbeth in. I didn't understand bringing Simmons in at all. I'm like, what? Come on.
I like Macbeth in there too for a few reasons. One, I think the defense has to suddenly wonder a little bit. Okay, first of all, is something up? Are we looking for a leak out into the flats or whatever? Number two, he gives you everything he's got. And if he's in there for a quarterback sneak, you can bet he's going to give you every ounce of energy and power that he's got into that quarterback sneak. And not only that, the line knows that they've got a job to protect him. He's the starting quarterback. He's their guy. And I'm not saying they're not trying to block for Austin Simmons, but there's a little bit more urgency when it's your guy in there. You don't want to be the guy that lets someone through to get a free shot on your starting quarterback. So I think going forward, I would leave him in and just say, yeah, this is your job. If you can leave Tom Brady in to do quarterback sneaks in a much harder scenario where there isn't that neutral zone, there isn't that free yard, then you got to be able to get that from your starting quarterback, no matter who your starting quarterback is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that changes.
Oh my God. Yeah, me too. And have for a long time now. I just don't know why scoring in the red zone never seems to make it to the top of their PowerPoint for plans for the week.
This game could have gone a different way if it were still close in the second quarter. The problem was it was over mid-second quarter. This game was finished. But you saw BC sustain like 3 straight injuries where Lucky Whitehead was injured. Butler ended up getting injured. Burnham was injured. They were losing. Lucky Whitehead came back, but he wasn't quite the same. Looked like an ankle.
The combo.
And had that been young Lacombo as well, like had this been a tight game at that point, it would have been tough. There would have been a lot of pressure on BC, but it wasn't. And so BC continued to just kind of do what they wanted to do, because they had all the options. They could run, they could pass, they could do whatever. They weren't put into a scenario where there was pressure on them. So that never really came to fruition. So you had guys like David Mackey, who ends up running, as a fullback. He became the primary running back because James Butler was the only running back BC dressed. He goes down. So now they've got a fullback as the running back, and he runs for 90 yards and a touchdown. So, they just, nothing could go right for the Argonauts tonight.
I mean, I have, it's all, not comparable, but I will say, like, I felt for the Toronto coaches, the defensive coaches, because it is the loneliest feeling in the world when you can't stop another team and your players are looking to you for something. And there's just nothing you can do. Whatever you dial up, you dial up a blitz, doesn't work. You dial up a jailbreak, it doesn't work. You play deep zone, it is an incredibly lonely and terrible feeling. And it's the feeling that makes you watch film for 19 hours a day, because you never ever want to be in a position like that again. So you want to have as many game plans as possible, because that's really what drives your desire to watch defensive film is that to never feel that helplessness. So I felt for the coaches, because I'm sure they must have. Nothing they dialed up worked the entire game. That's not easy to do.
The concern going forward offensively, we can address both sides of the ball, but offensively, they obviously weren't able to produce very much at all. They couldn't run at all. McLeod Bethel-Thompson was accurate, 15 of 21, a 71% completion, but only 178 yards in what really should have been, with them, they should have been passing the entire game, but they couldn't string drives together. They couldn't get first down. So that's why he only ends up with 21 attempts. On the other side, you've got Rourke with 45 attempts in a game where they didn't really even need to throw, but that just shows you, it shows you the disparity in execution and what was happening on one side of the ball versus the other. But like going forward, there are some serious issues that we have to talk about with the offensive line, because they lost Dejon Allen, right tackle, who, was one of their more stable pieces. They had a really tough time with Tate at left tackle. He had a really rough night. He pulled it together a little bit in the fourth quarter when it was a bit late, but he had a tough time tonight. He's not going to enjoy watching that film. But they had trouble inside. I know Philip Blake, missed a guy who ended up taking a pretty good shot. I think that was when they had Chad Kelly in, and that was Blake's guy that got through. But they had trouble. This line did not play as well as they can play, nowhere close to as well as they can play. And now they may be in a situation where they're down Allen. Hopefully not. We don't know, but it didn't look good. It looked like knee, and he was trying to bravely walk off the field under his own power. And you could just see the pain he was in. And just seeing that injury, we've seen that before. I don't expect to see Allen back anytime soon. I hope I'm wrong. But now what? So now what is the answer? Now where do you go? Like this isn't in a position to just sort of flip a switch and now the offense is better next week.
No, we worried about offensive line. That was, our concern heading into the season. And then a couple injuries made it, more troublesome. I agree. It might, if you can't put out, a decent offensive line, then it probably is curtains, because you just can't go anywhere. You can't do anything. So that is terrifying, I think. When you look at offensively, what the plan is. I still don't know what the offense is, other than checking down to swing out passes to the sideline. I don't,
because they can't get anyone open. Like I was watching downfield, and that's one of the nice things about being at the game is I can watch what's happening in the secondary. There just weren't guys like McLeod Bethel-Thompson. When he had time, he's looking at 5 receivers who are just absolutely blanketed. And so he had to scramble. And a number of times he stepped up in the pocket to create more time or rolled out.
Maybe more rubs.
Yeah, they have to change up. But part of this again is having guys out of position. Banks doesn't run nearly as effective a route tree when he doesn't have the waggle. That's a big part of his game. Starting stationary doesn't work for him. Daniels just isn't as effective from the inside. He's just not used to it. These are guys out of their spots, and we've talked about that a lot. And they're paying extra attention to Curly Gittens Jr., which we anticipated would happen. And he's still finding some space, but not like he did last year, because they're very aware of him. So they do have to make what I think is offensively. This is what I think has to happen for next week. So they first of all have to hope that Isaiah Cage is healthy and can return to play. And if he can, then you've got him at left tackle. You move Tate over to right tackle, assuming Allen is out, which I think he will be. Or you see if Richards can beat out Tate at right tackle. Maybe it's an open position battle between those two guys this week, and see which one can win. But there's got to be some pressure on the interior too. They've got to see. In watching this game film, they'll see that just how different it looked from last week when I thought they played so well. So that's something that they can hopefully pick back up again. I think a positive to take away from this is that it's something that Enoch Mwamba talked about after the game. He said what he liked to see was that in the locker room, guys were mad. Obviously, you're going to be mad. They're frustrated. but there wasn't any finger pointing. There was the finger pointing there was at each individual person from that same person saying, I've got to be better. Everyone's saying, I let the team down. I've got to be better. And you've got a room full of guys saying that. That's a much better scenario than it could be. Often in blowouts like this, you have teams with guys pointing at each other and saying, what were you doing here? How come you let this happen? Why did this go like this? You can see it go off the rails. We've seen that with many other teams, but this veteran team, they're pointing fingers at themselves saying, I have to be better. And that's, I think, at least a positive you can take away.
Yeah, it's a long season, and sometimes look at Saskatchewan. They went to Montreal and got the brakes beat off them. It happens. I think that our concerns are that maybe things were exposed, and my concern is that I'm up at 2 a.m. having to talk about this game. But when you take a step back, you got your lunch handed to you. You have a tough schedule coming up. They have shown the ability to regroup. Hopefully they can get a little healthier. They are not a very healthy football team. Pull together. And, if you have a nice game against Winnipeg, I think you're back on track. Now, if you don't have that, then I think that's a much bigger issue. But, I think you flush this game. There's no point watching the film. This kid Rourke, he came out and he looked like, Evans in the championship game, right? Just came out and was superhuman. And they were not prepared to defeat a superhuman on this Saturday night.
They were not. And like you say, that Winnipeg game is suddenly much bigger. So that's, at least they've got a little bit extra rest. That's Monday, July 4th. They've got a couple extra days, and they're going to need those days, not only to rest from injury, but just to improve, and to tighten up that defensive coverage for the DBs, to get some chemistry going with the receivers and the quarterback, and to fix that run blocking and scheme that run blocking better.
And hopefully, we can get the same guys on the field at every practice. I know, like, from a coaching point of view, there is nothing more frustrating than not being able to run reps with the starters, because it almost makes practice pointless. Like, if you're not running with your starting 12, not 9 of the 12 or 6 of the 12 or 10 of the 12, right? If you're not running all 12, it's like having almost no practice. So that's my hope, is they can run 12 on 12 most of the week, because it looked like a team that was not able to do that last week. Yeah,
and they weren't.
Right. And that's what it looked like. And BC looked like a team that ran 12 on 12s all week.
For the last 2 weeks, because they had a bye. So yeah, it did. 100%. Just they were polished and the Argos weren't, and that's I guess as simple as that. So hopefully this week can be better for practice. And I know the guys. The good thing about coming off a loss like this is that you can't wait to get to your next game. And this long period, you've got 9 days before your next game. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because this is going to get them riled up. There's going to be a lot of intensity at practice this week. They were embarrassed. That was Coach Dinwiddie said that after the game. Was the first question, how'd you feel? And he said embarrassed, and the whole team feels embarrassed. The coaching staff feels embarrassed, and they're angry. They're, I think, a little confused as well. And I think all of this is going to turn into a pretty effective week of practice. Like, there's no taking it lightly after something like this. It's not like guys are going to be joking around now at practice or not taking this Winnipeg game seriously. Coach Dinwiddie said something along the lines of maybe realizing that you're not where you thought you were, and that being a pretty effective motivator.
Yeah, and thankfully to our brothers from Hamilton, division-wise, we're still in pretty good shape. Yeah,
there's no question. You still have Ottawa and Hamilton without a win. Montreal, who has the only non-Toronto win in the division, you've got a leg up on because you beat them in the head-to-head. So division-wise, yeah, there's no emergency here, but it just, yeah, you can't let another game like this happen. JB, let's go through our plays of the game, and there's a pretty limited handful to choose from here. Do you want me to go first, or do you want it?
No, go ahead.
Okay. The play of the game for me happened very early, and then the wheels fell off after that. That first drive of the game, it needed to be an answer to, this is the first offensive drive of the game. They needed to answer what Nathan Rourke did in his touchdown drive. And it looked like that was going to happen. And that huge play to Tavares Daniels, a 48-yard pass up the seam. It was a bullet throw. McLeod Bethel-Thompson just finding this little window between two zones. Tavares makes a great catch, does a spin move, shakes two defenders, goes for 48 yards. And it was a beautiful play. It just felt like things were going to come together. If only they could have punched it in from the 1 yard line. But that on its own was, for me, the play of the game in a game that just didn't have many good plays for the Argos.
No, it really didn't. I think my play of the game would probably be McManus just absolutely demolishing the running back. It was a game that sort of raised my ire a little with the people on TV talking about, what a great violent game this is, and he's okay, he walked off the field, and just the word concussion was never mentioned. And that's really frustrating that in 2022 that we still can't have announcers acknowledging, and look, full credit to BC, they ruled everybody out, because I was going to throw my TV out the window if any of those guys had come back. But it's still a violent game. I like the violence in it. That's, I don't know, some kind of I don't know how I balance those two, but I do most of the time. So I thought the hit was very clean. He crushed them underneath. That was the focus I had defensively to take away that screen game. McManus has been absolutely the bright spot for the Argos. He's terrific. So I think put all that together, and that was a great play.
Yeah, it was. They had a couple nice. The thing with the defense, like you could come out of this and say, well, there were a couple of really nice plays. There were a few nice moments in coverage. There were a few really nice hits. There were a few nice run stuffs. Like James Butler didn't get going today. I know he got injured and he only ended up with 6 carries, but he had one long run. And other than that, he didn't look anything like what he looked like in the opening week where nobody could stop James Butler. So they did a decent job of containing him. So there were moments, but yeah, aside from those few plays, there aren't necessarily highlights that were coming out of it.
Yeah, I did, not to pile on, but it did stick in my craw a little bit that they didn't run the clock down enough at the end of the first half as well.
Which part do you mean?
In terms of when they kicked it back to BC.
Oh, to give them time.
Yeah.
Well, I think they felt like they needed, because they needed points out of that. So I think it was 17-3 at that point. And they're just in a situation where it's like, well, we got to get something. And so they weren't trying to run time down. They were trying to conserve so that they could at least get another field goal going into the half, if not a touchdown. But yeah, what happens is that backfires. They end up giving it back to BC and they put more points on the board, which I guess that couldn't really have gone worse. Yeah, because that ends with a 44-yard field goal for the last play of the game, and now it's 20-3 at half,
which is not insurmountable.
No,
it just things get out of hand in football. Football is too hard a sport. You see, like Montreal pounding on Saskatchewan, but football is too hard a sport to demand of players when they know they're not going to win. Right? It's just so hard. Football asks so much of you. And when you're losing by 25 points, I don't blame a single player. You just can't bring it the way you need to. And that's how 20-point games turn into blowouts. And
there's a difference in what you're talking about where, because there's two versions of that.
I'm not talking about giving up. I'm just saying, like, like when you play, it's like, to get too sportsy here, but like it really is 110% you have to give on the field. It's like more than you could ever ask of yourself. And, it's hard to demand that when there's nothing on the line.
And the difference is between what we saw tonight and teams that have come back from being down 20 points or more is that those teams that came back felt like in those games, they felt like they could come back. They felt like this game wasn't over. You talk about like Calgary at Hamilton, where they're down basically by the same margin and they came back and won. They felt from the beginning that they were going to be able to come back. And I just don't know that the Toronto players felt that when they jogged into the locker room at halftime.
No.
It just didn't feel like anything was going right.
No, I mean, especially like defensively, you're just like, man, we just couldn't stop them. We tried zone, we tried man, we tried blitzing, we tried this, we tried that. I mean, that, like I said, that's a very lonely feeling.
And I think a couple games, it's pretty amazing to think 2 games into the season and BC has punted twice, I believe, which is a really unusual thing for the CFL.
Well, I mean, look, we got ourselves a Canadian superstar.
Yeah, that's a nice takeaway too. Talking to Adam Ghost today, the Argonauts PA announcer, we were talking before the game about how we thought it would go, and he said, at least if the Argos lose, hopefully it's because Nathan Rourke was unstoppable. And at least we can then leave Vancouver saying, well, we've got this Canadian superstar who we're all cheering for nationwide. And that did happen. The Argos lost largely because of Nathan Rourke. He was the superstar again today, and through 2 weeks of the season has looked like the best quarterback in the league. I hope it continues. I would love to see him dominate. I would love to see him win most outstanding player at the end of the year. I think that would be incredible.
Who was the last quarterback you saw that played as well as he did in the CFL?
I was trying to think about that when you were talking about that earlier. And I don't know, especially like at this level over a stretch of 2 games, nothing stands out since like the Doug Flutie era. And
that's what I'm talking about.
Came back to me. Yeah. Like
100%.
Because it's 2 consecutive games. We've seen guys put up mammoth games, but not back to back like this with 90% completions. That just doesn't happen. Throwing around 400 yards, throwing all touchdowns, no interceptions with that kind of completion percentage. I don't remember. I'm sure there's been
Ricky Ray in Edmonton.
I don't think these numbers in back-to-back games. I'm not sure. It's the completion percentage. That's where I just don't think anyone else has it in consecutive games. But there are people that are into the stats way more than I am. I think we'll probably see some come out this week because everyone is going to be talking about Nathan Rourke this week and the accomplishments so far this season, because they're pretty unreal. I thought he would come back to earth a bit this week. I still expected him to play well, but I think he might have played better today than he did in the first game.
Yeah.
So
I think he did too.
So it'd be interesting to see. I think they've got Ottawa up next. And, Ottawa is fighting for their lives. They don't want to start the season. They're coming off a bye. They've got lots of time to prep. They don't want to start the season 0-3. This could be a pretty interesting game. Suddenly I'm interested in watching a lot of BC Lions games. So we'll see how that one goes.
It's great for the league too. I think that Calgary being a little better than I thought they would be, I think it's great for the league. I think if the league has 6 or 7 really good teams, I think that's great. Not, 2 great teams and then a bunch of teams that lose to each other.
You've got to get to bed. I've got a long flight home tomorrow. We got to wrap this thing up, but just a few last words. It's going to be okay. It's game 2 of an 18-game season. Game 2 was terrible, but there's no difference at the end of the day between a 44-43 loss and a 44-3 loss. In some ways, this is better this early on.
You know who the Argos could have used tonight?
Chandler Worthy? I don't know.
Yeah, your soon-to-be named CFL Special Teams Player of the Week, Chandler Worthy.
Yeah, I thought you'd enjoy him just going off.
Speaking of, firing people. Anyways.
Well, that will just about do it for us on this episode of the X's and Argos podcast. Again, 44-3, your final from British Columbia. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.